A brutal winter storm had buried the roads outside Hartwell, but inside a tiny roadside diner, the greater disaster was happening beside a sink filled with dirty dishes. 6 months earlier, billionaire Julian Vance had commanded one of America's largest logistics companies. Tonight, his sleeves were soaked, his hands were burned by hot water, and the only person willing to give him work was Emma Carter, the former maid who had once cleaned his mansion. Even after he lost his company, his fortune, and his reputation, Emma still called him Mr. Vance. "You're the owner here," Julian reminded her. Emma lowered her eyes. "Maybe, but you'll always be the man who gave my family a chance when no one else would." Then Julian slipped on the wet floor. He grabbed Emma to keep her from falling, but they crashed together beside the sink. For one breathless second, she was trapped in his arms. As he tried to lift her, his lips accidentally touched her cheek. Neither of them noticed the woman standing outside the rain-covered window. Vanessa Cole, Julian's glamorous fiancée, had seen everything. And the woman who abandoned him when the world called him a criminal suddenly became furious that a former servant might have the loyalty she never deserved. Before we reveal what Vanessa did next, subscribe and stay with us, because this was not merely a story about a billionaire losing his money. It was about a man discovering that the lowest point of his life might lead him to the only woman who had ever seen his true worth. Julian Vance had spent 15 years building an empire. Emma Carter had spent 6 years quietly serving inside his home before opening this small diner near his estate. She believed she was helping her former employer survive. She had no idea that Vanessa and Julian's closest friend were preparing to turn one innocent accident into a scandal and punish an honest woman for a betrayal she never committed. To understand why Emma Carter was still standing beside Julian Vance when the rest of the world abandoned him, the story had to return 6 months earlier, before the dirty dishes, the frozen accounts, and the forged signature that turned an admired billionaire into America's favorite villain. At 38, Julian had built Vance Industries into one of the largest logistics companies in the United States. His trucks crossed nearly every state, his warehouses moved billions of dollars in goods, and his decisions could shake entire markets. Yet he had never forgotten what it felt like to have nothing. He arrived at headquarters before sunrise, greeted security guards by name, and ate in the employee cafeteria more often than in private restaurants. Investors saw those details as unnecessary. Julian believed they were the reason success mattered. His mansion outside Hartwell displayed his wealth, but it rarely felt like a home. The person who noticed that loneliness most clearly was Emma Carter. Emma had worked there for 6 years. She was quiet and observant, but never weak. When another employee blamed her for breaking an expensive crystal bowl, she asked Julian to review the security footage. The recording proved her innocence, and Julian respected her honesty from that day forward. When Emma's mother later needed surgery and insurance refused to cover the full cost, Julian paid the balance through an employee assistance fund. He never mentioned it. Emma discovered the truth only after the hospital corrected the bill. From then on, she called him Mr. Vance, with a respect deeper than employment. Julian told her she owed him nothing, but Emma never forgot what he had done. Still, she did not intend to remain a maid forever. Emma had inherited her mother's recipes and dreamed of opening a diner near Hartwell. She saved every paycheck and kept a notebook filled with menus, expenses, and sketches of a place where no hungry person would be turned away. One afternoon, she entered Julian's study, holding a resignation letter. "I'm grateful for everything," she said, "but I need to build something of my own." Julian noticed the business plan beneath the letter. Instead of asking her to stay, he reviewed the numbers, corrected 2 mistakes, and warned her about a dangerous loan clause. "Don't spend your whole life caring for someone else's home," he told her. "Build a place that belongs to you." 3 weeks later, Emma opened Emma's Corner Diner beside the highway into Hartwell. The building was small, the appliances were second-hand, and the bank loan frightened her every night. But when she switched on the sign, she felt richer than she ever had inside Julian's mansion. While Emma struggled to keep her business alive, Julian believed his future was secure. His wedding to Vanessa Cole was 4 months away. Vanessa was elegant, polished, and adored by the press. She knew how to smile for cameras and make Julian believe they were building a life together. Reporters called them America's next power couple. Julian trusted Vanessa, but he trusted Marcus Reed even more. Marcus had been his closest friend since business school. They had shared cheap apartments, borrowed textbooks, and impossible dreams. When Vance Industries began to grow, Julian appointed Marcus chief financial officer, without considering anyone else. "If I can't trust the man who built this with me," Julian once said, "then I can't trust anyone." Marcus smiled when he heard those words. That night, after the executive floor emptied, Marcus sat alone before 3 monitors. Money moved from Vance Industries through shell companies into hidden accounts. For nearly 2 years, he had studied Julian's authorization habits, copied his digital signature, and altered approval logs. Every false transfer was designed to create one conclusion: Julian Vance had stolen from his own company. Vanessa suspected Marcus was hiding something. She once found confidential papers in his car. Marcus revealed only enough to frighten her, and promised that if Julian lost control of the company, her luxurious life would remain protected. Vanessa chose not to ask another question. The trap closed on a Monday morning. Julian entered the boardroom expecting a discussion about expansion. Instead, every director was seated beside corporate attorneys. A thick folder waited at his place. The chairman pushed it toward him. "We found $40 million in unauthorized transfers. Every approval carries your signature." Julian opened the folder. Bank records, access logs, electronic authorizations. Every page pointed directly at him. "This is impossible." Across the table, Marcus lowered his eyes. "I wanted to believe that too." Julian stared at the man he had called his brother and understood something no document could explain. Marcus was not surprised. He had been waiting for this moment. The board ordered Julian to surrender his access card and step down during the investigation. No one defended him. The people who had praised him days earlier would not meet his eyes. As Julian walked out of the company he had built from nothing, his phone began vibrating with breaking news alerts. But the cruelest blow was still ahead. Outside a luxury hotel, Vanessa Cole was stepping toward a wall of cameras, slowly removing her engagement ring before Julian had been given a single chance to tell her the truth. The doors of Vance Industries had barely closed behind Julian when Vanessa Cole stepped beneath the television lights and ended their engagement before he had been given a single chance to defend himself. Julian sat inside his car across town, watching the live broadcast on the dashboard screen. Reporters crowded around Vanessa outside the Beaumont Hotel. She wore a cream-colored coat and the wounded expression of a woman who had rehearsed exactly how much pain to show. "Ms. Cole, do you still intend to marry Julian Vance?" Vanessa lowered her eyes. The pause was perfect for television. "I don't think I ever truly knew the man I agreed to marry." Julian stopped breathing. Vanessa pulled the diamond ring from her finger and placed it into a reporter's hand. "If the accusations are true, I want no connection to what he has done." Camera flashes exploded. Julian stared at the empty place on her hand. 4 months earlier, she had cried when he proposed. Now she had erased him from her life, without asking whether the allegations were real. He called her once. She declined the call. When he tried again, her assistant answered, "Vanessa isn't available. She was supposed to marry me." "I'm sorry, Mr. Vance." The line went dead. Within an hour, the scandal swallowed everything. News stations interrupted regular programming. Financial commentators debated whether Julian had built his company on deception. Online strangers turned old interviews into evidence of arrogance. Former partners issued statements saying they were shocked and disappointed. Julian's attorneys ordered him not to speak publicly. The company froze his corporate accounts. The bank restricted several personal assets until investigators determined whether they were connected to the missing money. By late afternoon, Julian understood how quickly power disappeared when people believed it was dangerous to stand beside you. He drove toward his mansion outside Hartwell, hoping for one night away from cameras. Rain streaked across the windshield as he entered the stone gates, but 2 security vehicles blocked the drive. A court-appointed officer met him beneath the portico. "I'm sorry, Mr. Vance. The property is temporarily restricted. This is my home. It is also listed among the assets under review." Julian stared through the tall windows. The lights were on, yet he was no longer allowed to enter the house he owned. The estate manager appeared carrying a travel bag containing 2 shirts, jeans, toiletries, and Julian's old college sweatshirt. "This is what the attorneys approved," he said, unable to meet Julian's eyes. Julian accepted the bag. His entire permitted life now rested in one hand. A car slowed beyond the gates. Emma Carter was returning from a catering delivery when she recognized him standing in the rain. She pulled over and hurried toward him. "Mr. Vance?" Julian turned away. Of all the people who could have found him there, he wished it had not been Emma. She had known him as the man who solved problems with a phone call. He could not bear to see pity in her eyes. "You shouldn't be here. I saw the news. Then you know I'm not allowed inside my own house." Emma looked at the bag and the officer near the door. Her face held concern, not judgment. "My diner is 10 minutes away. Come have something warm. I don't need charity. I didn't say you did." Julian laughed bitterly. "Everyone wants something today. A statement, an apology, a confession. What do you want? I want you to stop standing in freezing rain as if suffering alone will prove your innocence. I'll be fine." Emma knew he was lying, but she did not argue. She placed a business card in the side pocket of his bag. "If that changes, the kitchen stays open until 10. Julian left without thanking her. He drove west while the rain grew heavier. Every familiar place carried the risk of reporters or someone eager to photograph his humiliation. His phone vibrated until he turned it off and threw it onto the passenger seat. Hours passed. The highway narrowed into a road bordered by bare trees and dark fields. The fuel warning appeared, but Julian barely noticed. He kept hearing Vanessa's sentence. "I don't think I ever truly knew the man I agreed to marry." Near midnight, the engine coughed and died beneath a flickering street lamp. Julian leaned against the steering wheel and laughed without humor. He had managed a nationwide transportation network, yet he had forgotten to put gas in his own car. Cold rain cut through his suit when he stepped outside. A wooden sign stood beside the road. "Welcome to Hartwell." Only then did he remember Emma's card. Emma's Corner Diner sat less than half a mile away. Its red sign glowed through the storm like the only warm thing left in the world. The front door was locked, but lights remained on in the kitchen. Emma was sweeping near the counter. She saw him through the glass, froze, then unlocked the door without asking a question. "You look worse than you did at the mansion. My car ran out of gas." "That explains the rain, not the rest of you." He was too tired to answer. Emma led him to a booth, placed a towel beside him, and returned with chicken soup, toasted bread, and black coffee. "I can pay," Julian said. "Then pay after you eat." He had not realized how hungry he was. When he finished, Julian took out his wallet. His first card was declined. The second failed too. "The bank froze everything," he said, his face burning. Emma tore the receipt in half. "I'll return tomorrow and pay double." "You'll do no such thing." Julian removed his watch and placed it on the counter. "This is worth more than your monthly revenue." Emma pushed it back. "I'm not taking a $60,000 watch for soup. You know what I did for your mother. If this is repayment..." Emma struck the counter with her palm. "My mother is alive because you helped her, and I will always be grateful. But I didn't open this diner to spend my life owing powerful people. I fed you because you were hungry. Don't turn kindness into a debt, because debt is easier for you to understand." Before he could answer, a tray crashed in the kitchen. The line cook, Billy, stormed through the swinging door and ripped off his apron. "I'm done, Emma. The fryer is broken. Tyler quit yesterday, and I'm not closing alone again. I told you the repairman is coming Friday. You said that last Friday." Billy threw his apron onto a stool and walked into the rain. Emma closed her eyes. Plates filled the sink, pots crowded the counters, and the morning delivery was due in 6 hours. Julian glanced at the mess. "Who's Tyler?" "My dishwasher. The one who quit yesterday. And your cook just left." "I noticed." Emma gathered his plates, but Julian took them from her. "I can help." She looked at his ruined suit and hands that had probably never scrubbed a pan. "Can you wash dishes?" "No." Despite everything, Emma laughed. "But I learned quickly," Julian added. "I can pay $9 an hour. That's slightly lower than my previous salary. You may negotiate after you prove you can keep a coffee cup alive." She handed him a faded black apron. Julian removed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and followed her into the kitchen. The first 20 minutes destroyed what remained of his dignity. He used too much soap, flooded the sink, and stacked the plates so badly that one shattered on the floor. "That comes out of your paycheck," she said. "At this rate, I'll owe you money by sunrise. You already owe me for soup." He looked at her in surprise. Emma smiled. "I thought debt was easier for you to understand." For the first time that day, Julian laughed without bitterness. They worked past midnight. Emma showed him how to scrape pans, where to stack glasses, and how to keep the floor dry. Julian listened without complaint, even when hot water reddened his hands and grease stained his clothes. Near 2 in the morning, the final pan reached the drying rack. Emma leaned against the counter. "You didn't leave. You expected me to. I've met rich men who walked away from dinner because their table was too close to the kitchen. I'm not rich tonight." Her expression softened. Julian looked around the cramped room. "I don't have anywhere to go." Emma hesitated, then led him up a narrow staircase behind the pantry. A small room waited above the diner with a single bed, a wooden chair, and a window facing Main Street. "My father slept here when winter storms closed the highway," she said. "You can stay until you make other arrangements." Julian placed his bag on the floor. "Why are you doing this?" "Because when I told you I wanted to leave your mansion and open this place, you didn't laugh. You treated my dream as if it mattered. That doesn't make me your employer anymore." "No, but losing your company doesn't erase the man you were before the headlines." Julian looked away, afraid she would see how deeply the words affected him. "You can call me Julian." Emma gave him a small smile. "Get some sleep, Mr. Vance. Your shift starts at 6. The door closed, leaving Julian alone in the smallest room he had occupied since college. Rain tapped against the window. He should have felt humiliated. Instead, for the first time since the boardroom, he felt safe. At dawn, Emma unlocked the diner and started the coffee. Julian came downstairs wearing borrowed work clothes and the black apron. His back ached, his hands stung, and his future remained uncertain. Still, he stood beside the sink before she asked him to. Across Main Street, 3 black luxury vehicles stopped opposite the diner. Vanessa stepped out of the first car. Through the front window, she saw Julian Vance, the man she had abandoned on national television, wearing an apron, while Emma Carter handed him a cup of coffee. The expression on Vanessa's face was not pity, it was jealousy. Vanessa remained across the street just long enough to watch Emma place a steaming cup of coffee in Julian's hands. Only days earlier, Vanessa had publicly rejected him, as though he were a stain on her reputation. Yet seeing him inside that small diner, calm, grateful, and strangely comfortable beside his former maid, made something cold tighten inside her chest. She had expected Julian to beg her to return. She had imagined him calling from some expensive hotel, promising to fix the scandal and restore the life they had planned. Instead, he was wearing a faded apron while Emma Carter smiled at him as if his ruined name meant nothing. Vanessa raised her phone and took several photographs through the windshield. She did not enter the diner, not yet. "Drive," she told her chauffeur. As the cars pulled away, Julian looked toward the window, sensing movement outside. By then, the street was empty. The breakfast rush began 30 minutes later. Emma had expected Julian to struggle. She had not expected him to treat a $9 an hour job with the same seriousness he once brought to billion-dollar negotiations. He arrived before the other employees, checked every shelf, and arranged the clean plates by size. Unfortunately, effort did not equal skill. He poured coffee into a customer's water glass, carried 3 orders to the wrong table, and nearly destroyed the old espresso machine while trying to adjust its pressure valve. A waitress named Nora grabbed the plug before smoke could rise from the back. "Mr. Vance," Emma called from behind the counter, "please stop improving my equipment." Julian turned with a wrench in his hand. "I identified the problem. You became the problem." The kitchen staff laughed. Julian looked offended for half a second, then laughed with them. It was the first time any of them had seen a man accept embarrassment without trying to prove he was more important than everyone else. Emma still struggled to give him instructions. Whenever a heavy box arrived, she stepped forward before asking him to carry it. If a customer complained, she apologized before allowing Julian to answer. Years of working in his mansion had trained her to think of him as someone whose time was more valuable than hers. By the third morning, Julian noticed. Emma was standing on a chair, trying to lift a carton of canned tomatoes onto the top shelf. Julian took the box from her. "You could have asked me. You were washing dishes. That is my job. You owned 12 distribution centers, and now I own this apron." Emma climbed down. "You don't have to prove anything." "I'm not proving anything. I'm working for you." The sentence made her uncomfortable. "You don't work for me." Julian pointed toward the timesheet beside the kitchen door. "My name is on your payroll. I haven't paid you yet." "Then I am an unpaid employee," which sounds illegal. Emma tried not to smile. Julian lowered his voice. "Inside this diner, you are the owner. Stop treating me like I can still fire you." For the first time, Emma understood that her respect had begun to feel like distance. "All right," she said, "clean the grease trap." Julian's confidence disappeared. "What exactly is a grease trap?" Emma handed him a pair of rubber gloves. "Something the former owner of 12 distribution centers is about to meet." By lunchtime, Julian's expensive education had proven useless against 10 years of hardened kitchen grease. He emerged from beneath the sink with a stain across his cheek and a smell that made Nora open the back door. Emma laughed so hard she had to lean against the counter. Julian looked at her, pretending to be insulted, but he had never seen her laugh like that in the mansion. Back then, she had always been careful. Quiet steps, lowered eyes, hands folded whenever Vanessa entered a room. Here, Emma moved with confidence. She knew every customer's order, corrected invoices, managed employees, and calmed an impatient supplier without raising her voice. Julian began to see the woman he had overlooked while she was cleaning his home. That afternoon, the diner grew unusually quiet. Emma sat at a corner table surrounded by bills. She moved figures from one page to another, then rubbed her forehead. Julian dried his hands and approached. "Something wrong?" "The same thing that's always wrong. The diner makes enough money to stay open, but never enough to breathe." She reluctantly showed him the invoices. Julian studied them and immediately found duplicate delivery charges. The dairy supplier had also raised prices 3 times without changing the contract. "Did you approve these fees?" "I didn't know they were separate fees. They were hoping you wouldn't." Julian reorganized the accounts, marked unnecessary expenses, and calculated how much she could save by changing 2 vendors. Emma stared at the final number. "That would cover next month's loan payment. You also order too much food on Tuesdays and not enough on Fridays." "How could you know that?" "You throw away fresh bread every Wednesday morning, and Nora complains about running out every Saturday." Emma looked at him in disbelief. "You've been here 4 days. I spent 15 years watching where money disappeared." For a moment, the scandal returned to the room between them. Julian's expression changed, but Emma did not offer pity. She simply slid another stack of receipts toward him. "Then watch these." They worked side by side until sunset. Later, when the last customer left, Julian found Emma repairing a torn booth with silver tape. He silently brought a screwdriver and helped remove the damaged panel. Neither mentioned the company, Vanessa, or the investigation. They talked about ordinary things instead. Emma's mother, Julian's terrible cooking, and the fact that he had never done his own laundry until that week. Emma shook her head. "You built an empire but couldn't operate a washing machine." The instructions were unnecessarily complicated. They said, "Press start." Julian smiled. The diner no longer felt like a hiding place. It felt like the first place where failure did not define him. But while Julian was learning to live without power, Vanessa was preparing to use his new life against him. That evening, she sent one of the photographs to a celebrity news reporter. In the image, Julian stood behind the counter in his black apron, while Emma leaned close to show him something on a receipt. Vanessa added a short message. "He has been living with his former maid since the investigation began. You may want to ask how long this arrangement has really existed." The following morning, the photograph appeared online beneath a cruel headline. Disgraced billionaire hides in former Maid's diner. Customers began entering with phones raised. Some came to stare. Others whispered that Emma must have planned everything. Julian wanted to remove the article from the screen, but Emma read it without reacting. "They made me look like I rescued you for money," she said. "I'm sorry. You didn't write it." Across the country, one person studied the same photograph more carefully than everyone else. Rachel Mills, a former accountant at Vance Industries, enlarged the reflection in the diner window. Parked across the street was one of Marcus Reed's company cars, at a time when Marcus had publicly claimed he had no idea where Julian was. Rachel's hands began to tremble. The photograph meant to humiliate Julian had revealed that Marcus had found him first. And Rachel knew exactly why Marcus was afraid of what Julian might remember. The photograph Vanessa had released was meant to humiliate Julian, but Rachel Mills saw something hidden inside it. Marcus Reed had already found Hartwell, and he was watching the diner from the shadows. Rachel saved the image before the article could be edited. She enlarged the reflection of the black sedan, compared its license plate with an old company transportation report, and confirmed that the vehicle belonged to a corporate security contractor Marcus had recently hired. She considered calling Julian immediately. Then she stopped. If Marcus was monitoring him, any careless message could expose her too. Rachel had worked under Marcus long enough to know that he never acted without preparing a second trap. For now, she placed the photograph inside an encrypted folder and began searching old transaction records from her home computer. In Hartwell, Julian and Emma faced a more immediate problem. The article had turned Emma's corner diner into a spectacle. Cars crowded the parking lot before breakfast. Some people came because they supported Julian. Others came only to stare at the disgraced billionaire carrying plates. A few filmed him without permission and laughed whenever he made a mistake. One young man ordered coffee, waited until Julian approached, then raised his phone. "Tell us what $40 million buys that $9 an hour doesn't." Julian placed the cup on the table without reacting. "It buys better manners, apparently." Several customers laughed, but Emma did not. She walked over, took the coffee back, and pointed toward the door. "You can leave." The young man blinked. "I paid for that, and I refunded it. This is a diner, not a circus. I'm giving your business exposure." Then expose the exit. The room fell silent as he walked out under the eyes of the regular customers. Julian watched Emma return behind the counter. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. You could lose business." "I would rather lose one customer than teach everyone else that cruelty comes with free refills." Her answer stayed with him for the rest of the day. That evening, Julian packed his travel bag. Emma found him at the bottom of the staircase. "What are you doing?" "Leaving before I destroy what you built." "You are not destroying anything. There were reporters outside before sunrise. Someone spray-painted 'thief' on your back wall. Your employees are being photographed. This ends when I go." Emma crossed her arms. "Where will you go?" "That isn't your problem. It became my problem when you started making decisions for my business." Julian looked toward the dining room. Nora was wiping tables while two construction workers finished dinner. Everything inside the diner was modest, fragile, and real. He did not want his scandal to poison it. "You worked too hard for this place." "So did you. I've been here less than a week." "And in less than a week, you found $1,200 in overcharges, fixed my inventory system, and convinced the bread supplier to honor his original contract. That doesn't erase what's happening outside." Emma stepped closer. "The people outside think they know you because they read a headline. If you leave now, you are letting them decide who belongs inside my diner." Julian's grip tightened around the bag. "I don't want you paying for my mistakes." "You still believe you made them?" He hesitated. "No." "Then stop behaving as if you deserve punishment." The words struck harder than any accusation. Julian slowly placed the bag on the floor. Emma nodded toward the kitchen. "Good. The dinner plates are waiting." The following weeks changed the diner in ways neither of them expected. Julian used his business experience carefully, never pretending the restaurant belonged to him. He asked questions before making suggestions. He studied which meals customers ordered, how long tables remained occupied, and where money disappeared without improving service. He helped Emma reduce the menu from 43 items to 28, keeping the dishes customers loved and removing the ones that wasted ingredients. He negotiated smaller deliveries on slow days and introduced a simple system for tracking food before it spoiled. Emma refused to raise prices on the children's meals, so Julian found savings elsewhere. On Monday mornings, they began serving free coffee to veterans. On Wednesday afternoons, students could receive a sandwich and fruit by showing a school ID. Emma worried the program would cost too much. Julian calculated the numbers. If 10 customers pay for coffee because they support what you're doing, it covers 20 children's lunches. And if they don't, then I wash more dishes. The programs brought new customers, but not because Julian advertised them. Hartwell residents spread the news themselves. A retired mechanic donated apples from his orchard. A local teacher left $20 every Friday for student meals. The hardware store repaired the damaged back door without charging labor. For the first time since opening the diner, Emma reached the end of a week without choosing which bill to delay. She sat in the office, staring at the account balance. This cannot be right. Julian leaned over her shoulder. It is. We made enough to cover payroll and the loan payment. You also have a small reserve. Emma turned toward him. How small? Small enough that you should not celebrate by buying a yacht. She laughed. Julian had begun to recognize the sound of her laughter before he saw her. It reached him through the kitchen window when she joked with customers. It followed him upstairs when she closed the register. Without noticing when it happened, he began measuring his days by the moments that made her smile. Emma noticed changes in him too. The man who had arrived in a ruined suit now wore work boots and rolled his sleeves without complaint. He no longer checked his silent phone every few minutes. He knew which elderly customer needed help standing and which child would pretend not to be hungry until Emma offered an extra plate. He still carried the posture of a man accustomed to command, but the hardness around his eyes had softened. One evening, Julian found a small tube of burn cream beside the sink. He held it up. Is this new? Emma kept writing an order ticket. Your hands look terrible. They are improving. They looked better when you signed contracts. You were watching my hands back then? Emma stopped writing. I cleaned your office. It was difficult not to notice them. Julian smiled. Emma quickly took the tube from him. Use it or don't. I have customers. He watched her walk away with more speed than necessary. The distance between them began shrinking through ordinary moments. They shared coffee before sunrise. They closed the diner after the staff left. Sometimes they sat in the last booth and reviewed receipts until midnight. Other nights they talked about everything except money. Emma told Julian about her father teaching her to cook when she was 9. He had built their first dining table from discarded wood and believed no guest should leave hungry. Julian admitted that success had made him afraid of stopping. Every year he earned more, expanded farther, and promised himself he would rest after the next achievement. But there was always another one, Emma said. There was always another excuse. Did Vanessa ever ask you to slow down? She liked the life my speed created. Emma did not criticize Vanessa. That made Julian trust her more. One Friday night, a severe storm struck Hartwell. Rain hammered the windows, wind shook the diner sign, and water began collecting near the rear entrance. The final customers left early. Nora and the cook hurried home before the roads flooded. Julian offered to finish closing while Emma checked the upstairs windows. When she returned, water had spread across part of the kitchen floor. The drain is clogged, Julian said. Emma grabbed a mop. You take the sink. I'll handle the floor. They worked for nearly an hour. Thunder rattled the dishes and the lights flickered twice. Julian washed the last stack of pans while Emma pushed water toward the drain. You missed one, she said. Julian held up a spotless plate. This? The pan behind you. That pan has personally insulted me 3 times tonight. Emma stepped around the mop bucket and reached past him. I'll do it. You are the owner. Owners delegate. You are the dishwasher. Dishwashers wash. Julian turned at the same moment Emma stepped onto a wet patch. Her shoe slid. Julian grabbed her waist before she struck the metal counter, but his own foot lost traction. They fell together onto the rubber mat beside the sink. Emma landed against his chest. For a moment, neither moved. Rain thundered against the roof. A pan spun once on the floor and settled into silence. Julian's arm remained around her waist. Emma's hand was pressed against his shoulder. Their faces were so close that he could see a tiny scar beside her eyebrow he had never noticed before. Are you hurt? He asked. No. You're sure? I think your elbow broke my fall. My elbow is honored. Emma tried to push herself up, but her palm slipped on his wet shirt. She fell toward him again. Julian turned instinctively to protect her head. His lips brushed her cheek. The contact lasted less than a second. Both of them froze. Julian immediately released her and sat up. I'm sorry. Emma touched the place where he had kissed her. It was an accident. Yes. Obviously. Completely. Neither sounded convinced by the speed of their answers. Julian stood and offered his hand. Emma accepted it, but the moment their fingers touched, she pulled away too quickly. I should check the front windows, she said. They were fine 10 minutes ago. Storms change. She hurried into the dining room. Julian remained beside the sink, staring at the unfinished pan. His heart was beating far too hard for a simple fall. Outside the rear window, Vanessa Cole stood beneath a black umbrella. She had arrived with legal papers authorizing Julian to transfer his remaining company shares. Marcus had told her to approach him when he was tired, isolated, and desperate. Instead, she had seen Emma lying in his arms. From where Vanessa stood, there had been no slipping shoe, no wet floor, and no accidental movement. She saw only Julian holding the former maid and pressing his lips to her face. Vanessa raised her phone. The camera recorded several seconds through the rain-streaked glass. Emma against Julian's chest, his arm around her waist, their faces close together. Vanessa's hands trembled. She had abandoned Julian publicly because she believed he would crawl back once the scandal became unbearable. She had expected fear to make him obedient, but Julian was not begging for her forgiveness. He was healing without her, and the woman helping him heal was someone Vanessa had barely acknowledged while Emma worked inside the mansion. Vanessa stopped the recording and walked back to her car without entering the diner. Marcus answered on the second ring. Did he sign? No. Then why are you calling? Vanessa looked through the windshield at the warm light inside Emma's diner. I found something better. The next morning, she entered the restaurant wearing a tailored white coat. Conversations stopped as customers recognized her. Julian emerged from the kitchen. What are you doing here? Vanessa smiled as though they were still engaged. I came to bring you home. I don't have a home with you. Her smile tightened. The board may reconsider if you cooperate. Marcus prepared documents that protect your remaining assets. What do I have to surrender? Your voting shares. Julian almost laughed. So Marcus sent you. I came because I still care about you. Emma approached with a coffee pot, but stopped when Vanessa turned toward her. I see you found another way to serve him, Vanessa said. Emma set the pot down. This is my business. Is that what you call it? Vanessa, Julian warned. She ignored him. You left the mansion, opened a diner near his property, and the moment he lost everything, you gave him a room. That is either remarkable loyalty or excellent planning. Emma's face hardened. I never wanted him to lose anything. Of course not. A rich man is more useful than a ruined one. Julian stepped between them. Leave. Vanessa looked into his eyes. You really think she sees you as an equal? She still calls you Mr. Vance. She has spent years waiting for you to notice her. Emma said nothing, but the accusation struck a fear she had never allowed herself to name. Vanessa moved closer to her. And you should ask yourself what happens when his company comes back. Do you honestly believe he will choose a roadside diner over the world he belongs to? Enough, Julian said. Vanessa picked up her handbag. Sign the papers by tomorrow, or the board will move without you. She walked out, leaving a silence heavier than the storm. Emma avoided Julian for the rest of the day. When he tried to discuss Vanessa's words, she insisted there was nothing to discuss. Yet she stopped calling him Julian and returned to the formal distance of Mr. Vance. That night, Vanessa sent the video to Marcus. He watched it twice. This is incomplete, he said. It is enough. For what? To remind the public what kind of woman Emma Carter is. Marcus understood immediately. If they could portray Emma as Julian's secret lover, every act of kindness would appear calculated. Her diner would become evidence of an affair. Her loyalty would become greed. More importantly, Julian would lose the one person helping him regain his strength. Marcus forwarded the footage to a media consultant with one instruction: remove the fall, keep the embrace. Before sunrise, Emma's phone began vibrating on the nightstand. Hundreds of messages filled the screen. When she opened the first link, she saw herself lying in Julian's arms beneath a headline accusing the former maid of seducing her employer before his engagement had even ended. The kiss had lasted less than 1 second. By morning, it had become a betrayal witnessed by millions. By sunrise, the accidental kiss had become a national scandal. The video showed Emma lying in Julian's arms beside the kitchen sink. It showed his hand around her waist and his lips touching her cheek. What it did not show was the water on the floor the moment she slipped, or Julian falling as he tried to catch her. Marcus's media consultant had removed every second that revealed the truth. The headline beneath the video was even more damaging. Former maid caught with billionaire employer. Did the affair begin before his engagement ended? Emma watched the clip 3 times, not because she doubted what had happened, but because the edited version looked disturbingly convincing. Without the fall, the scene appeared intimate. Without the sound, Julian's startled apology looked like a whispered confession. Comments multiplied faster than she could read them. People called her a gold digger. Some claimed she had deliberately opened the diner near Julian's estate so she could remain close to him. Others accused her of waiting for Vanessa to leave before taking advantage of a broken man. By 7 o'clock, Emma's Corner Diner had received more than 2,000 one-star reviews from people who had never visited Hartwell. The first threatening phone call came before breakfast. "You should be ashamed of yourself," a woman shouted before hanging up. The second caller told Emma she had no right to steal another woman's fiancé. The third knew the diner's address. Julian found Emma standing behind the counter with the phone still pressed to her ear. Her face had gone pale, but her voice remained steady. "We're closed today," she said. He took the phone from her. "No, we're not." She looked at him. "There are reporters in the parking lot. Then they can stand outside. My employees are afraid to come in." That is exactly what Vanessa and Marcus want. Emma lowered her voice. "This is not another corporate fight, Julian. Nora has 2 children. Billy's replacement is 19. The people working here did not agree to become targets." Julian glanced through the front window. Cameras were already gathering behind the glass. A reporter pointed toward him while another filmed the diner sign. "I'll speak to them," he said. "No. If I explain what happened, they will cut your explanation the same way they cut the video." The truth of her answer stopped him. Emma turned the sign from open to closed. By noon, the story had moved beyond gossip websites. Television hosts debated whether Julian's relationship with Emma had begun while she was still employed at his mansion. Old photographs of Emma carrying groceries and opening car doors were presented as proof of secret intimacy. Vanessa gave a carefully staged interview from her apartment. She sat beneath soft lighting with no jewelry except the empty mark where her engagement ring had once been. "I ignored certain warning signs because I trusted Julian," she told the interviewer. Emma was always around. She knew his schedule, his private habits, everything. Looking back, perhaps I was the last person to understand what was happening inside my own relationship. She never directly said Julian and Emma had been lovers. She did not need to. Her pauses did the accusing for her. Julian watched part of the interview before shutting off the television. She knew nothing was happening. Emma stood near the kitchen doorway. Knowing the truth is not the same as needing it. Julian turned toward her. "What does that mean?" "It means Vanessa does not need people to believe her forever. She only needs them to hate me long enough to destroy this place." As if the words had summoned the next attack, glass shattered at the front of the diner. Emma ducked. A brick rolled across the floor, surrounded by broken pieces of the window. Tied around it was a sheet of paper with one sentence printed in red ink: "Stay away from other women's men." Julian ran outside, but the car responsible had already disappeared around the corner. When he returned, Emma was kneeling beside the broken window, picking up glass with trembling hands. "Don't touch that," he said. "I have to clean it." "No, you have to step away before you cut yourself. This is my diner, and someone just threw a brick through it because of me." Emma stood. "Because of Vanessa. Because I stayed here. Stop trying to turn every bad thing into your responsibility. Someone could have been sitting beside that window. No one was. What about tomorrow?" Emma did not answer. Julian looked around the dining room. The overturned chairs, The broken glass and the red message on the brick made the diner feel different. Until that moment, it had been the one place, untouched by the violence of his old world. Now that world had followed him through Emma's front door. "You were right," he said. "I need to leave." Emma's expression tightened. "That is not what I said. It is what you meant. I meant we need to protect the staff. My presence makes that impossible." He walked toward the staircase, but Emma followed him. "So you are going to disappear again?" "I am trying to keep you safe." "No. You are doing what you always do. You decide what everyone needs, then call it protection." Julian stopped at the first step. "You think I enjoy this? I think you know how to fight for companies and contracts. But the moment something becomes personal, you run." Her accusation landed harder than she intended. Julian slowly turned around. "I lost my company, my home, and the woman I was supposed to marry in less than one day. I came here because I had nowhere else to go. Now your name is being destroyed because you offered me soup. I offered you more than soup. I know." "Then stop acting as if leaving is the only noble choice." Julian's voice grew quieter. "What do you want me to do, Emma?" She looked toward the broken window. "I want you to tell me whether I am just the place where you hid after Vanessa abandoned you." The question silenced him. Emma waited, even though part of her feared the answer. Julian stepped closer. "You are not a hiding place." "Then what am I?" He opened his mouth but stopped. The truth was tangled with too many emotions. Gratitude, admiration, desire, fear. He knew he cared about Emma, but he also knew he had met this new version of her while his life was collapsing. He was afraid of promising something he did not yet understand. His hesitation was brief. It was still long enough. Emma's eyes changed. "I understand." "No, you don't." "I think I finally do." She walked behind the counter and picked up the broken pieces of the sign. "Stay somewhere else for a few days." "Emma, the room upstairs belongs to the diner. As its owner, I am asking you to leave." The formality in her voice made the request feel colder than anger. Julian packed before dark. He moved into the Hartwell Motor Lodge, a worn roadside motel with a buzzing sign and curtains that did not fully close. The room smelled of old carpet and industrial cleaner. He placed his bag on the bed, sat beside it, and realized the space felt emptier than the mansion ever had. He did not return to the diner the next morning, but he did not abandon Emma either. Before sunrise, a contractor arrived to replace the shattered window. Emma assumed the insurance company had sent him until he handed her a paid invoice. Julian had covered the cost. That afternoon, a local attorney called and offered to represent the diner against the false reviews and harassment. His retainer had already been paid. The following day, 2 suppliers who had suspended deliveries suddenly changed their minds after receiving calls from one of Julian's former business contacts. Emma recognized what he was doing. He was staying away because she had asked him to, while quietly holding the diner together from a distance. She wanted to be angry. Instead, she missed him. The kitchen felt too quiet without his arguments about coffee temperature. The morning receipts remained unsorted. A clean black apron hung beside the sink, untouched. On the 3rd evening, Julian received an encrypted email at the motel. The sender was Rachel Mills. He remembered her as a careful junior accountant who rarely spoke during executive meetings, but always arrived with complete records. The message contained no greeting. "Marcus found you before the media did. I can prove the vehicle outside the diner belonged to his security contractor. I also believe the fraudulent approvals originated from a device connected to your home network. Do not contact me through company email." Julian called the number attached to the message from a prepaid phone. Rachel answered after one ring. "Are you alone?" "Yes. Marcus has been moving records since you left. Several vendor files disappeared from the system yesterday. Why are you helping me?" "Because I reviewed one of the transfers before the investigation. The timestamp made no sense. You were speaking at a conference in Seattle when the approval was issued from New York. Did you tell the board?" "I told Marcus. He ordered me to correct the record." Julian stood beside the motel window. What exactly did he say? "That the chief executive's travel schedule was none of my concern." "Do you still have the original data?" "Part of it, but the strongest evidence may not be at the company." Rachel explained that several forged authorizations had been created through Julian's private network at the mansion. Someone with physical access could have installed a device to copy his credentials. Julian remembered Marcus entering his study whenever he visited, but nothing specific stood out. Then, Rachel asked one question. Was anyone else working in the house during those late-night visits? Julian thought of Emma. He drove to the diner after closing. Emma was alone, sweeping beneath the newly repaired window. She stiffened when he entered, but did not ask him to leave. "I need your help," he said. She leaned the broom against the wall. "With the investigation?" "Yes." He told her about Rachel and the private network. Emma listened carefully, then walked toward the last booth and sat down. "Marcus came to the mansion late at night more than once," she said. "How late?" "Sometimes after midnight." "He always said you knew he was coming." "I didn't." Emma searched her memory. "One night, he arrived while you were at St. Matthew's Hospital. One of your warehouse supervisors had been injured." Julian remembered. He had stayed beside the employee's family until nearly dawn. "What did Marcus do?" "He went into your study. He said he needed to upload documents before an overseas deadline." "How long was he there?" "Almost an hour." Emma's expression changed. "What?" "He dropped something when he left." Julian leaned forward. "What kind of thing?" "A small black flash drive. I found it beneath your desk the next morning." "Where did you put it?" "In the upper drawer." "That drawer was empty when investigators searched the study." "No, not that one." Emma stood and demonstrated with her hands. "There was a narrow compartment behind the drawer. You kept old family photographs there. I put the drive inside because I thought it was private." Julian's pulse quickened. Marcus may not know that compartment exists. If the investigators missed it, the drive could still be there. For the first time since the accusations began, Julian saw a path toward the truth. But across town, Vanessa was already meeting Marcus in the back seat of a black sedan. Marcus had learned that Rachel contacted Julian. He also knew Julian had returned to the diner. "Emma remembers something," he said. Vanessa looked toward the dark windows of Emma's corner. What could a maid possibly remember? More than people notice. That is why servants are dangerous. They enter rooms while everyone behaves as though they are invisible. Vanessa folded her arms. "What do you want me to do?" Marcus opened a velvet case. Inside lay Vanessa's diamond bracelet, valued at $200,000. She stared at it. "No, you said you wanted Emma destroyed." "I wanted her exposed, not arrested." Marcus closed the case and placed it in her hand. "Once the police find this in her possession, no one will believe anything she says about a flash drive. She will be a former maid who stole from the family she served." Vanessa's fingers tightened around the box. "She will claim it was planted." "Of course she will. Thieves usually do." The following evening, the diner reopened for limited service. Hartwell residents filled several booths to show Emma they supported her. During the dinner rush, a woman wearing a baseball cap entered, ordered coffee, and sat near the counter. When Emma carried food to the back table, the woman moved past Emma's handbag hanging beneath the register. The security camera caught only the edge of her coat. 20 minutes later, she left without finishing her coffee. At 8:30, 2 police cars pulled into the parking lot. The room grew silent when the officers entered. "Emma Carter?" She stepped forward. "Yes, we received a report concerning stolen property belonging to Vanessa Cole." Emma looked toward Julian, who had arrived moments earlier to discuss the mansion. "I have never taken anything from her." One officer explained that they had a warrant to search the diner and Emma's personal belongings. Emma handed over her handbag without hesitation. The officer opened it on the counter. He removed her wallet, keys, a small notebook, and a folded grocery list. Then his hand stopped. From the bottom of the bag, he lifted a diamond bracelet that glittered beneath the diner lights. Emma's face lost all color. "I have never seen that before." The officer examined the engraved clasp. Vanessa Cole's initials were carved into the gold. Around Emma, customers began whispering. Cameras were already gathering outside again, as though someone had known exactly when the police would arrive. Julian looked from the bracelet to the fear in Emma's eyes. The woman who had given him shelter when the world called him a thief was now being placed in handcuffs for a crime designed to make no one believe her again. The handcuffs closed around Emma's wrists, while the diamond bracelet glittered on the diner counter like proof of a crime she had never committed. For several seconds, no one moved. The customers who had come to support her now stared in stunned silence. Nora covered her mouth. A child in the corner booth began to cry because he did not understand why the woman who gave him free breakfasts was being taken away. Emma looked at Julian. "I swear I have never seen that bracelet before." "I know." The officer beside her glanced at him. "Sir, step back." Julian did not move. She was working in front of 20 people all evening. Someone put it in her bag. That will be investigated. You should investigate who reported it and how they knew exactly where to look. The officer's expression hardened. "Do not interfere." Emma shook her head slightly, warning Julian not to make the situation worse. "It's all right," she said, even though fear had drained the color from her face. "No, it isn't." Julian followed the police car to the Hartwell station. Reporters were already waiting when they arrived, their cameras flashing before Emma had even stepped onto the sidewalk. Someone had alerted them in advance. Questions struck her from every direction. Did you steal from Vanessa Cole while working at the Vance mansion? Were you having an affair with Julian Vance? Did Mr. Vance help you hide stolen property? Emma kept her eyes lowered as officers guided her inside. Julian stopped in front of the cameras. "Anyone who publishes the claim that Emma Carter is a thief without evidence will answer to her attorney," a reporter shouted. "Are you paying for her defense because she knows something about you?" Julian turned toward him. "I am standing beside her because she stood beside me before she knew whether I would ever have money again." Inside the station, Emma was questioned for nearly 2 hours. She explained that her handbag had remained beneath the register during the dinner rush. Customers and employees had moved around it freely. She had never visited Vanessa's apartment and had no reason to steal jewelry she could never wear without attracting attention. The detective placed a photograph of the bracelet on the table. "Ms. Cole says this disappeared several weeks ago. Then why did she wait until tonight to report it? She claims she recently reviewed the security records from her residence and became suspicious of you. I stopped working at the mansion before Julian was accused. Vanessa knows that." The detective watched her carefully. "You still had access to the property. I returned my keys the day I left. And yet you opened a business close to the estate." Emma understood the direction of the questions. Vanessa had built a story before the bracelet ever appeared. The loyal maid who secretly desired her employer, remained near his home, and stole from his fiancée. Every innocent decision now looked calculated. At the other end of the building, Julian called 3 attorneys before one agreed to drive to Hartwell immediately. He used the last unrestricted credit line available to him to cover Emma's bond. Vanessa appeared outside the station just before midnight. She wore dark glasses despite the hour and walked toward Julian as if she had come to offer comfort. "This has gone too far," she said. Julian looked at her without greeting. "Yes, it has. I never wanted Emma arrested." "Then withdraw the complaint. I cannot ignore stolen property simply because you are emotionally involved." Julian stepped closer. "You knew where that bracelet would be before the police searched her bag." Vanessa removed her glasses. "Be careful what you accuse me of. I was careful with Marcus. I was careful with you. That is why both of you believed I would never see what was in front of me." Her expression changed. "You are throwing your life away for a woman who worked in your house." "No. I threw my life away when I trusted people who believed loyalty was something they could buy." Vanessa's jaw tightened. "She is using you. The night I arrived at her diner, my cards did not work. I had no company, no house, and no reputation. What exactly was she using me for?" Vanessa had no answer. Julian continued. "I doubted the wrong people once. I will not make that mistake with Emma." The station doors opened behind him. Emma stepped outside with her attorney. There were no handcuffs now, but the marks remained around her wrists. She heard Julian's last sentence. For the first time since the video appeared, some of the fear in her face softened. Vanessa saw it too. She turned away before either of them could speak to her. The next morning, Emma returned to the diner before sunrise. She unlocked the door, walked through the dark dining room, and stopped beside the register. Her handbag still hung where the police had found it. The diner no longer felt safe. Every chair seemed to hold the memory of someone watching. Every shadow looked like a stranger reaching beneath the counter. Emma removed the key from the front door. "I'm closing." Julian stood behind her. "For today? For good." He had expected anger. The exhaustion in her voice frightened him more. "I cannot ask the staff to keep risking this. This is what Marcus wants." "I know. Then why give it to him?" Emma turned around. "Because I am not you, Julian. I do not have attorneys waiting for my call. I do not have money to survive months of attacks. One accusation can follow someone like me for the rest of her life. You think I don't understand that? You were accused as a billionaire. People still listened when you spoke. I was arrested as a maid. People decided I was guilty before I reached the police station." Julian could not deny it. Emma looked around the diner. "My father built the first tables in this place. My mother gave me the recipes. I spent years saving for this, and Vanessa destroyed its name in one night. No, she damaged it. She has not destroyed it. What is the difference? The difference is whether you open that door again." Emma's eyes filled, but she refused to cry. "You should go back to the city. My name has not been cleared. It will be. And when it is..." She looked away. "When it is, this place will be too small for you." Julian understood that Vanessa's words had remained inside her. He stepped closer. "You stopped me from disappearing when I believed there was nothing left worth fighting for. I am not going to stand here and watch you disappear now." Emma said nothing. "Give me 1 day," he continued. "If we find nothing, we discuss closing, but not before we prove someone entered the diner and touched your bag." They began with the security cameras. The main camera showed the counter, but the angle did not clearly reveal the handbag. Julian reviewed the footage frame by frame while Emma watched the entrance. At 7:12 p.m., the woman in the baseball cap entered. At 7:38, Emma carried 2 plates toward the rear booth. The woman stood, crossed behind the counter, and disappeared from view for 4 seconds. When she returned to her table, one hand remained inside her coat pocket. Nora recognized her. She came in last month with Vanessa's assistant. Julian enlarged the image, but the woman had kept her face lowered. Outside, a traffic camera caught her leaving in a gray sedan. Rachel traced the license plate to a rental company. The account used to reserve the vehicle belonged to the private office of Vanessa Cole. It was not enough to prove who placed the bracelet in Emma's bag, but it was enough to challenge Vanessa's story. Emma's attorney sent the footage to the police. By afternoon, the theft charge remained open, but the detective agreed not to pursue formal prosecution until the woman in the video was identified. Julian then called Rachel. "We found a link to Vanessa." "That helps Emma," Rachel said. "It does not clear you. The flash drive may, if it is still inside the mansion." Julian's attorneys obtained permission for him to retrieve personal documents from the estate. Investigators would supervise the visit, but they did not know about the hidden compartment Emma remembered. The next morning, Julian and Emma drove through the gates together. The mansion rose above the frozen lawn exactly as Emma remembered it, but the windows were dark and the fountain had been shut off. Yellow evidence seals crossed several interior doors. Emma paused in the entrance hall. For 6 years, she had arrived before dawn, walked silently through those rooms, and left before the parties ended. She knew which floorboards creaked, which windows leaked during storms, and where Vanessa hid unopened gifts from people she considered unimportant. Julian watched her face. "Are you all right? I used to think this place was another world, and now? Now it looks like a building where too many people pretended to be happy." They entered the study under the supervision of a court officer. Most of the shelves had been emptied. Files were boxed and labeled. Julian's desk drawers stood open. Emma moved toward the upper drawer. "The compartment is behind this." The officer checked the court order. "You may retrieve personal photographs, not company records." Julian nodded. Emma removed the drawer and reached into the narrow space behind it. Her fingers touched a stack of old photographs, then something hard. She pulled out a black flash drive. The court officer stepped forward. "What is that?" "I found it here years ago," Emma said. "It may belong to Marcus Reed." The officer sealed it in an evidence envelope before anyone could access it. Julian immediately requested a forensic copy through his attorney. That evening, Rachel reviewed the duplicated files remotely. The drive contained digital certificates used to create executive approvals. Several matched Julian's electronic signature, There were also lists of shell companies, coded payment schedules, and copies of transactions that had never appeared in official records. But the most important folder was encrypted. Rachel tried 3 passwords and failed. "What happens if we cannot open it?" Emma asked. "We still have evidence that Marcus possessed copies of Julian's credentials," Rachel said. "But he will claim the drive was planted." "By whom?" Julian asked. "By you or Emma." The accusation was predictable. They needed something Marcus could not explain away. Rachel found one damaged audio file outside the encrypted folder. Most of it was static, but a man's voice could be heard saying, "Once the final shares are transferred, Vance has nothing left." The second voice was unclear. Julian recognized Marcus immediately. Emma stared at the waveform on the screen. He was planning to take everything before the investigation began. "Yes," Julian said, "but we need him to say more." Marcus arrived at the diner after midnight. He came alone, wearing a dark overcoat and the same calm expression he had worn in the boardroom. Julian had expected him. A small recording device was hidden beneath the counter. Emma waited in the office with her hand near the alarm button. Marcus glanced around the empty dining room. "So this is where you rebuilt your kingdom?" "It belongs to Emma." "Of course it does. You have always enjoyed letting other people believe they matter." Julian did not react. "What do you want?" Marcus placed a contract on the counter. "Your remaining shares. Sign them over, surrender the flash drive, and I make Emma's problem disappear." "You planted the bracelet?" "I said I could make the problem disappear. And Vanessa, she is useful when properly motivated." Julian opened the contract without reading it. "You stole $40 million and framed me because you wanted the company." Marcus laughed quietly. "I spent 15 years building that company while you took every photograph, every magazine cover, and every speech. I negotiated the debt. I found the investors. You became the visionary because you knew how to stand in front of a camera. You owned equity, not enough. You could have asked for more, and listened to you explain why I should be grateful." Marcus's control began to slip. "You did not create Vance Industries alone. I never claimed I did. You never had to. Everyone else claimed it for you." Julian looked directly at him. "So you decided to erase me." "I decided to take what should have been mine." The recording device beneath the counter captured every word. Julian pushed the contract back. "No." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Emma will be charged. The diner will close. Every person who stands beside you will lose something. You sound afraid." "I am offering you mercy." "No. You are asking for the only shares you could not steal." Marcus saw the faint red light reflected in a metal napkin holder. His expression changed. He reached beneath the counter and found the recorder. Julian moved first, but Marcus slammed him into the sink. Plates crashed to the floor. Marcus tore open the evidence bag containing a duplicate of the flash drive and tried to snap it in half. Emma ran from the office. "Stop!" Marcus pushed Julian against the metal counter and raised a heavy pan. Emma struck the alarm. A siren exploded through the diner. Marcus froze. Red lights flashed in the parking lot as the security system contacted police automatically. He threw the pan aside and ran through the back door. Julian followed him into the alley, but Marcus had parked beyond the cameras. His car disappeared before the first police cruiser reached Main Street. The recorder lay broken beneath the counter. Rachel later recovered most of the audio from its memory card. Marcus's statements were clear enough to raise serious questions, but his direct confession to planting evidence had not been captured. After the police left, Emma found Julian sitting beside the sink with a cut near his eyebrow. She cleaned the wound in silence. "You could have been seriously hurt," she said. "So could you. I told you to leave the diner, and I failed as an employee." Despite herself, she smiled. Julian reached for her hand. "I did not stay because I needed somewhere to sleep." Emma looked at him. "I did not stay because I owed you. I stayed because this is the first place where I became someone I could respect again." His fingers tightened gently around hers. "And because of you." Emma's breathing changed. Julian continued before fear could stop him. "I know the worst moment in my life brought me here. I know that makes everything complicated, but what I feel when I look at you is not gratitude. What is it? It is the reason I want a future after this is over." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she did not answer. Before she could, Julian's phone vibrated on the counter. A breaking news alert appeared. Marcus had released an audio recording to every major network in the country. Julian pressed play. His own voice filled the diner. Move the $40 million through the secondary accounts. Make sure the board never sees the authorization. The sentence sounded natural, precise, unmistakable. Emma looked at Julian in horror. That is not what you said. No. On television screens across America, experts were already calling the recording the final proof of Julian Vance's guilt. Marcus had failed to destroy the real evidence, so he had created a confession that had never existed. Marcus's fabricated confession reached every major news network before Julian's attorneys could issue a response. By morning, the diner was surrounded again. Reporters shouted through the windows while television analysts described the recording as the missing evidence that finally proved Julian had ordered the $40 million transfer. The board canceled its scheduled review of Marcus and called an emergency meeting to discuss removing Julian's remaining voting rights. For the second time, the country believed the case was over. Inside Emma's corner diner, Rachel played the recording through her forensic software. The sentence sounded smooth, but its audio pattern told another story. There are at least 4 separate edits, she said. Marcus combined words from different conversations. Julian leaned toward the laptop. Can you prove it? I can prove the background noise changes. But a defense attorney will argue that compression caused it. Emma listened from the counter. Beneath Julian's voice, a faint mechanical chime sounded 3 times. She suddenly stood straighter. Play that part again. Rachel replayed the clip. Emma closed her eyes. That sound came from the antique clock in Mr. Vance's study. Julian looked at her. There were clocks in dozens of company offices, not like that one. It rang 3 uneven notes because the final hammer was damaged. Rachel isolated the background noise. The pattern matched Emma's description. That could place the original conversation inside the mansion, Rachel said. Emma shook her head. No, it proves the opposite. She explained that the clock had stopped working 2 weeks before the date Marcus claimed the recording was made. She remembered because Vanessa had complained about its silence during a charity dinner. Emma had removed the clock and placed it in storage, where it remained until after she left the mansion. If the conversation happened on the date Marcus gave the press, Emma said, that clock could not have been ringing. Rachel's fingers moved rapidly across the keyboard. She compared the audio with archived recordings of Julian's business meetings. Within an hour, she located the sources Marcus had used. Move the $40 million came from a discussion about warehouse insurance coverage. Through the secondary accounts came from a meeting about customer billing systems. Make sure the board never sees had been taken from Julian warning an attorney not to show confidential medical records during a lawsuit. Authorization came from an unrelated security presentation. Marcus had built a confession from harmless sentences, spoken months apart. The encrypted folder on the flash drive opened shortly afterward when Rachel tried the date Marcus and Julian founded Vance Industries. Inside were original transfer schedules, shell company ownership documents, forged digital certificates, and messages ordering financial staff to alter timestamps. One document connected the hidden accounts directly to Marcus. Another listed payments to Vanessa's personal management company. Emma's attorney also received confirmation from the rental agency that Vanessa's assistant had reserved the car used by the woman who approached Emma's handbag. Police identified the woman as a freelance stylist who had worked for Vanessa for 3 years. Faced with security footage and payment records, the woman confessed that Vanessa had instructed her to place the bracelet in Emma's bag. By noon, Julian's attorneys had assembled the complete case. The board meeting began at Vance Industries headquarters, under the attention of cameras from across the country. Julian entered through the same doors he had walked out of in disgrace, but this time Emma and Rachel walked beside him. Marcus sat at the far end of the table. His confidence lasted until Rachel connected her computer to the main screen. She demonstrated every cut in the false recording. Emma explained the broken clock. The forensic accountant displayed the original financial files and traced the stolen money through Marcus's shell companies. Then Julian played the recovered diner recording. Marcus's own voice filled the boardroom. I decided to take what should have been mine. No one interrupted when it ended. The chairman slowly turned toward Marcus. "Do you have an explanation?" Marcus pushed back his chair. "You are trusting a maid, a dismissed accountant, and a man already under investigation." Julian remained seated. "No, they are trusting evidence." Marcus looked toward the doors. 2 investigators entered with federal agents behind them. He had prepared a car at the rear of the building, but the authorities had already found it. By the time the media announced his arrest, he was being taken into custody on charges of fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, and evidence tampering. Vanessa attempted to leave the country that afternoon. Police stopped her before she reached the private terminal. Faced with charges related to the planted bracelet and the manipulated video, she surrendered her messages with Marcus in exchange for consideration from prosecutors. Those messages confirmed that she had known Julian was being framed before she removed her engagement ring on television. By evening, every headline had changed. Julian Vance, cleared in $40 million fraud case. CFO arrested after former maid. Exposes critical audio clue. Vanessa Cole, linked to false theft accusation. Reporters gathered outside headquarters as Julian emerged. They shouted questions about his return, his fortune, and whether he intended to sue everyone who had accused him. Julian did not answer any of them. He stepped aside and brought Emma forward. "The person who deserves an apology today is not me," he said. "It is Emma Carter." The cameras turned toward her. She was called a liar, a thief, and a woman who used her position to chase money. "The truth is that she gave me food when I could not pay, work when no one trusted me, and dignity when the world decided I no longer deserved any." Emma's eyes filled with tears. Julian faced the reporters again. "You judged her more harshly because she was a former maid and believed she did not have the power to defend herself. You were wrong." Later, Vanessa asked to speak with Emma outside the courthouse. Without cameras, expensive lighting, or assistance, Vanessa looked smaller than Emma remembered. "I hated you because he trusted you after he stopped trusting me," Vanessa admitted. "You had nothing I respected, yet you had the one thing I could not get back." Emma remained calm. "You did not lose Julian because of me." Vanessa lowered her eyes. "You lost him the moment you decided your reputation mattered more than whether he was innocent." Emma walked away without waiting for an answer. The board formally offered Julian his position as chief executive officer before the day ended. His office, shares, and authority would be restored immediately. Everyone expected him to accept. But when Julian turned to share the news with Emma, she was gone. She had returned to Hartwell alone, convinced that the man who had regained his empire no longer needed the small diner or the former maid who had helped him survive without it. Julian stood inside the restored corner office, surrounded by everything he had once fought to recover. For the first time, getting his old life back felt exactly like losing something. Julian had spent months fighting to recover his name, his company, and everything Marcus had stolen from him. Yet as he stood inside his restored corner office, surrounded by glass walls and the skyline he once ruled, the victory felt strangely empty. Emma's absence changed the meaning of everything. The board expected Julian to return immediately. His name had been cleared, the stock price was recovering, and reporters were already calling his comeback one of the greatest reversals in corporate history. Julian accepted the position, but not without conditions. Vance Industries would undergo a complete financial audit. Independent directors would replace everyone who had ignored warning signs. Employees who reported misconduct would receive legal protection, and a new emergency fund would help workers facing medical or financial crises. Finally, Julian told the board that he would divide his time between headquarters and Hartwell. One director frowned. "You intend to run a national company from a roadside town?" "No," Julian answered. "I intend to remember what kind of man should be running it." 2 days later, Julian left the city before sunrise. Emma's corner diner was quiet when his car stopped across the street. The reporters were gone. The threatening messages had slowed, and the broken window had been repaired, but the months of scandal had left their mark. Emma stood behind the counter, reviewing invoices. When the bell above the door rang, she looked up and froze. Julian wore a dark tailored suit again. For one painful second, he appeared to belong to the life she had always believed would take him away from her. "Mr. Vance," she said softly. He looked at the empty tables. "You are closed? We open in 20 minutes. Good. I was hoping to speak to the owner before my shift." Emma frowned. "Your shift?" Julian removed his coat, walked into the kitchen, and took the old black apron from its hook. "What are you doing? You told me my name was still on the payroll. You are the CEO of Vance Industries again, and you still have breakfast dishes." He tied the apron around his waist and approached the sink. Emma followed him. "You did not drive all this way to wash coffee cups." "No. I came because you left before I could tell you what happened." "I saw the news." "That is not what I mean." Julian placed a folder on the counter. Emma opened it and found a letter confirming that the diner's outstanding bank loan had been paid in full. Her expression immediately hardened. "You paid my debt. I protected the place that protected me. I never asked you to buy my business. I did not." He turned to the final page. The deed, licenses, and ownership remained entirely in Emma's name. "The diner is yours. No partnership, no hidden claim, and no repayment schedule." Emma closed the folder. "You cannot solve every problem with money. I know. Money did not make you believe me. It did not stop you from being arrested, and it did not bring you back to the city with me. Then why did you do this? Because this place nearly disappeared while you were defending my name. I could not allow the bank to take it after everything it gave both of us." Emma looked toward the dining room. Her father's old photographs still hung beside the register. The tables he had repaired by hand remained in their places. Her anger weakened, but another fear remained. "You have your life back now." Julian shook his head. "I recovered my company. That is not the same thing. You belong there. I spent years believing that." He stepped closer. "When I entered this diner, I had no money I could access, no home I was allowed to enter, and no one willing to stand beside me. You gave me a meal without asking whether I was guilty. You once helped my family. You gave me more than repayment." Emma lowered her eyes. Julian continued. "You forced me to work. You corrected me when I was arrogant. You laughed when I nearly destroyed your coffee machine, and you trusted me with your business when the rest of the country treated me like a criminal." A small smile touched her face. "You really did almost destroy that machine. It was badly designed. It had one button." Julian smiled, but his voice became serious again. "That night beside the sink, kissing your cheek was an accident." Emma looked at him, but everything I felt afterward was not. The room became completely still. Julian reached into his coat pocket and removed a small velvet box. Emma covered her mouth. "The last time I proposed to someone, there were photographers, publicists, and a ring chosen to impress people I did not know. This time, I only want the truth." He opened the box. Inside was a simple diamond ring. "I love the woman who knew me when I had everything and respected me when I had nothing. I love the woman who built this place with her own hands and refused to let cruelty decide who belonged inside it." Julian lowered himself onto one knee. "Emma Carter, will you let me spend the rest of my life earning the faith you gave me before I deserved it?" Tears rolled down Emma's cheeks. For 6 years, she had called him Mr. Vance because he was her employer. Later, she used the name because she was afraid to believe they could ever stand as equals. Now she reached for his hand. "Yes, Julian." Before he could place the ring on her finger, the kitchen door opened. Nora, several employees, and half a dozen regular customers stepped out from where they had been hiding. The diner erupted in applause. Emma stared at them. "You all knew?" Nora laughed. "He may run a billion-dollar company, but he is terrible at keeping secrets." Months later, Julian and Emma were married in the garden behind the diner. There were no celebrity guests or television contracts. The chairs were borrowed from the church. Local families brought food, and children ran between tables beneath strings of warm lights. Julian returned to Vance Industries as a different leader. He listened more carefully, trusted evidence instead of appearances, and never again allowed loyalty to become an excuse for ignoring questions. Marcus was convicted of fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft. Vanessa accepted responsibility for planting evidence and manipulating the video. Her public image disappeared, but Emma refused every interview asking her to celebrate Vanessa's downfall. She already lost the life she tried to protect, Emma said. That is punishment enough for me. One quiet Saturday morning, Julian entered the diner before opening. He removed his expensive watch, rolled up his sleeves, and began washing coffee cups. Emma leaned against the doorway. You know the CEO is not required to wash dishes anymore. Julian placed a clean cup on the rack. I do not wash them because I have to. Then why do you? He walked toward her and kissed her gently on the same cheek his lips had touched by accident months earlier. Because I never want to forget that losing everything brought me to the one place where I found what truly mattered. The bell above the front door rang as the first customers entered. Julian tied his apron tighter. Emma slipped her hand into his, and together they stepped into the dining room, not as a billionaire and his former maid, but as two people who had seen each other at their worst and still chosen to stay. If this story reminded you that true loyalty is revealed during the hardest moments, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who still believes people deserve a second chance. If you found this story meaningful, press 1 in the comments. If you did not find it meaningful, press 0 and tell us what you would have done differently. We would also love to know which city or state you are watching from.